So one of the most anticipated anime of the year, Solo Leveling, is out. Episode 1 and 2, and episode 3 is almost here. And if you're a manual reader and you've read it up to the end or up to some point, you can tell that there are some changes that they've made to the anime, whether bringing some things forward from later chapters or introduce certain characters that were supposed to appear later on, and adding some quality of life things in there to actually make it all work as a unit. So I'm here to talk about the differences, the changes in the anime versus the manhwa episode 1 and 2. Now, first of all, the manhwa is from Korea and this is a Japanese adaptation of it. So you can see that the city Seoul has been substituted for Tokyo to reflect the Japanese origin. Some of the names add-ons have also been removed. Now, the opening scenes see hunters on an island fighting chimera ants, and they are getting torn apart. That is when we are introduced to 3 S-rank hunters, plus another one, making it 4 characters that are introduced later on in the manhwa when, after Sanji-woo has gotten his powers, leveled up, become a player and all that. Which is completely different from the manhwa, which from the start, they show you a little snippet of Sanji-woo in the dungeon holding the sword up with a statue coming up to him, within giving a short introduction of his name and him being the weakest hunter in the world. And right off, you just see that this manhwa is going to be a crazy one. Now, the first 3 characters that we see, the first one being the S-rank healer Min Byung-gu, becomes an important character later on to Sanji-woo. Baek Yoon-ho, who is the guild master of the White Tiger Guild, one of the strongest and one of the most important characters in the manhwa. But this Wolverine Lightning Clawed, S-ranker is not shown in the manhwa. He's completely, I think I kind of referenced him during the conversation about a failed attempt on this Jeju, island, which is a major arc in the manhwa. This Jeju Island raid that is taken on in the opening minutes is going to come back later on in the manhwa as a major plot point, major arc, where Sanji-woo actually becomes a hero to the nation and actually showcases his powers to the entire world, which I think we are not going to see until maybe season 2, season 3. And we are introduced to another S-ranker, Choi Jonin, the guild master of the Hunters Guild, one of the strongest also in this manhwa. And as I said, these characters are not introduced until Sanji-woo actually becomes a player and levels up a little. Same goes for Go Gan-hee, who is the chairman of the Hunters Association, and Woo Jin-chul, his second in command, who are brought in the anime to actually come and dump some exposition about the resources and artifacts that are actually found in the dungeon and the uses and what the world wants to do with them. It's kind of actually good to actually breathe life into this world and make the characters relatable in a way. Now, Sanji-woo being introduced in the anime is almost the same as the manhwa. From the panels, how he walks in, how he's going to this raid, the people around gossiping about him, talking about how he's the weakest hunter in the world. But one thing that they did not show is when Sanji-woo goes to get coffee, talk with the vendor before going into the dungeon. Now, one addition that they added to the anime, which wasn't in the manhwa, was when Sanji-woo was fighting the goblin and gets fatally stabbed. In the manhwa, they don't show all that. They just cut to, Lee Jong-hee actually healing him. And I like that about how they made the change to the anime, because it just shows you how truly weak he is, getting stabbed by just a simple goblin, and just his despair and just the hurt and pain he feels, seeing other hunters thrive and succeed whilst he stays at the bottom. After this scene, the anime actually cuts to the association where hunters are testing for their rankings, and here we are also introduced to 2 new characters again who appear later on in the manhwa but are brought in early in the anime, and that is best boy Yoo Jin-ho and best girl Chai Ha-in, who comes in with a fan service. Now, back in the dungeon, Sanji-woo and Jan Lee, flirting and all that is pretty much the same And Park and Kim are actually giving, clear motivations in the anime. That is right before, they voted to go to the double dungeon. Unlike the manhwa, it wasn't until when they were running for their lives from the statues and was about to die that he actually had a flashback to his family and why he's doing what he's doing. Now, the voting to go into the double dungeon is pretty much the same as in the manhwa. The only difference is that Mr. Song actually shoots his fireball inside the dungeon to actually see how far it goes before he actually made the decision to go in the case of the manhwa. And it was him who actually suggested for them to actually go to the double dungeon instead of Park and Kim being the ones to do so in the anime. Also, when it came to the voting, Sang Jin-woo, when he's thinking about his motivations, to actually make this decision, they actually include his sister in, his thoughts, which in the manhwa, they only show a small panel of the mother on a hospital bed. But one major part that they changed in the manhwa was when they got to the big door. Everyone was pretty scared, especially Park and Kim, who talked about how this seems dangerous. But Mr. Song kind of motivated them in a way by talking about how were they just going to return after coming here, and that they could return if they were scared, and that he will move on. And he's the one who actually opens the door. Unlike in the anime, where it is actually Kim who actually opens the door after talking about how, we are all a team and we move forward as such. And thus, everybody, follows him in. Now, after this, we get a scene which was not in the manhwa. That is of the chairman of the Hunter Association, Go Gun-hee, actually advising the new hunters on the dangers of being one and leaves them with one big advice. Something that actually reflects, these hunters going into this second dungeon without the proper procedure and protocol for finding such a dungeon and being relaxed because it's a D-rank dungeon. Now, in the anime, we cut to them exploring the dungeon. Everything is pretty much the same as the manhwa. Now, everything that happens next is almost like the manhwa, from Mr. Song reading the 10 commandments to Jeon-hee warning Sang Jin-woo that, she felt the statue's eye move, to Jin-woo actually dismissing her and the door getting closed on them, which in the manhwa, he actually felt chills. He felt like something that, like the mood and the atmosphere, like danger was coming basically before, the commandments was even finished, being read. To that one character deciding to leave but got cleaved and everyone goes into panic mode. But one major change was when Jin-woo, felt like he was about to die and had that flashback. He talked about how he was always criticized, almost starved to death, the numerous times that he almost died in the dungeon. Now, in the manhwa, he talked about how he didn't even bother buying any weapon again because it always broke and it's just a waste of his money. But in the anime, he actually has a knife which he talked about how he can only afford a cheap one, which even broke during his fight with the goblin. Now, the last scene of the episode actually doesn't happen in the manhwa, where they are panicking, they are scared, and Jin-woo says that he's going to die. It doesn't happen in the manhwa, but it's just something that, they had to put in to end the episode. Now, that's pretty much the changes and the differences between the manhwa and episode 1 of the anime. Now, let's just move into episode 2. Episode just opens up with them in panic and everything. Next is the conversation between Sang Jin-woo and Mr. Song, which in the manhwa is just word for word, except for a certain dialogue that they removed. That was Song actually talking about how he brought only 3 healers. One got destroyed by the beam and the other 2 are completely shocked out of their body. But in the anime, Jeon-hee is the only healer that we are made aware of.
1つ目神を敬せよ、2つ目神を称えよ、3つ目神を信仰せよ。この掟を守れぬ者は生きては帰れん。
Now the next scene, which talks about hunters and the gates and how they came about, was lifted straight from the starting of chapter 5. And after that, we get an anime only scene where they introduce Sang Jin-woo's sister Sang Jin-na and their classmate Han Song-yi. These are characters that are also introduced later in the manhwa. As this wasn't in the manhwa, this was totally a new way for the anime to actually show a clear reason for Jin-woo always risking his life, and that is for his family, his sister, and of course his mother as well. As we see another scene which wasn't in the manhwa where she actually visits his mother, who is in a coma. I think it flows better in the anime, making us more emotionally involved with this main character that they want us to care about. Now after this scene, we come back to the dungeon where there's a character who is confident in his speed to actually escape this dungeon, but was almost completely disintegrated apart from his feet, and it just showed that what they were doing or whatever they thought that they were going to do to escape was completely futile, and they had to find another way. This character was completely unknown in the manhwa, only in the web novel where he's called Mr. Jew. Now everything after this follows the manhwa almost to a T, with Jin-woo actually testing his theory about the statue bowing down and everybody bowing down as well, which leads to one of the most iconic moments in the manhwa. Which had its own meme popularity up to now, which is such a shame that the anime did not recreate it one-to-one. Thankfully, it still did not lose its creepy and scary factor, with the sound design creating more immersion and making the scene a whole lot better. Now everything following this also follows the manhwa exactly, with the statues coming alive, chasing them to the death scenes until Sang Jin-woo figures out the second commandment, them all running to statues with musical instruments in their hands. But one thing that they changed was when Sang Jin-woo left Jeong-hee to go to another statue. There was a visual representation of his life and death situation where they showcased him literally holding on to a life and death thread. And also in the manhwa, they actually make it more known that he's gone to the wrong statue, which he almost died, and that is where he actually lost his foot. We get to this scene where the altar appears and they all move to it, and lightning actually shoot out, I think it's fire or lightning, onto the circle, lighting it up, which in the anime I think they kind of went the simple route, unlike the manhwa where it actually passes through each conduit, which was actually cool. I know it's a nitpick. Now, Kim blaming Mr. Song for everything happening is still the same as in the manhwa, but in the manhwa, Sang Jin-woo actually tries to defend Song, but he's quickly shut down, and we only see his inner thoughts about how most of them voted to be here. But in the anime, they changed him trying to protest and actually stand up for Mr. Song, and only showed his inner thoughts. And actually, it was the people, the hunters there, who actually tried to stand up for Mr. Song. Yeah, everything that happens after this just follows the manhwa word for word, from everyone leaving to Sang Jin-woo making Mr. Song take Jeong-hee out, to her crying, to him knocking her out, to all the brutality that occurs afterwards, with him being destroyed and beat up and stabbed, bloodied over by these statues. But one thing that was different in the anime and manhwa was the flashback to his family, about how he was mad, and also talked about how he was also doing it for his family, and that all those who left talking about that were all hypocrites. That did happen in a manhwa, but there wasn't any flashback to his family, his sister and mother. Plus, one major thing that I forgot about, he doesn't lose an arm in the manhwa, unlike the anime. Now after this, he gets the notification that he's met the qualifications to become a player, which it goes over quickly in the anime, but in the manhwa he actually gets surprised and shocked about what he's seen, but quickly accepts it as is his only chance as he contemplated. And the chapter just ends there at chapter 10, and that is when the anime also ends there, which I don't know whether in episode 3, which I haven't watched yet, where they are going to show this scene a little. But anyways, these are all the changes in the anime from episode 1 to 2, which covers 10 chapters of the manhwa. Now we all know that this manhwa is one of the the most popular and most hyped up manhwa in the world, and it's really good. The panels are high quality. You have a character to root for, especially one who was so weak, and now you see him level up and power up and shut up all those who look down on him. Now do let me know in the comments below what you thought of these changes, and if you would have liked them to actually keep everything one-to-one, or you like the few changes that they made. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. It does help the video and the channel out. Subscribe and turn on that post notification bell not to miss any new video as well. As always, Nade CGA. See you guys in the next one.